There's a place in the English countryside where autumn arrives slowly, like someone easing a door closed so as not to wake the house. The leaves do not fall all at once there. They let go one by one in their own time, drifting down through cool, clear air and settling softly onto the lane without any hurry at all. You are driving toward that place now. The road is narrow and lined with old hedgerows, the kind that have been standing for 200 years or more. The branches arch gently overhead, and when the late afternoon light filters through the last of the golden leaves, it falls across the windscreen in long, warm stripes, easy and quiet. There is almost no traffic. There has not been any for a while, just the road and the fields on either side and the low amber sky above them. You are not rushing. There is nowhere to be before you arrive. The car moves slowly through the valley. On the left, a stone wall runs alongside a meadow where a few sheep stand completely still, facing in the same direction as though listening to something far away. On the right, an old gate hangs open onto a muddy track that disappears into a wood. The trees in there are dark and still and full of shadow. They look peaceful. Everything looks peaceful. You roll the window down just a little, and the air that comes in smells of damp earth and wood smoke, and something faintly sweet that you cannot quite name. Apple, perhaps. Yes, apple, and something like cider vinegar, something fermented and warm and ancient. The smell of a harvest that has been and gone, and left its memory in the air. The lane curves gently to the right, and then you see it. The old orchard inn sits at the end of a short gravel drive, set back from the lane behind a low stone wall with an iron gate that stands open. It is an old building. You can see that at once. The stone is honey-colored and weathered, darkened along the edges where moss has grown in the mortar. The roof is low and covered in soft gray slate. The windows are small and deep-set, with leaded panes that catch the last of the daylight in tiny bright points, like a handful of stars pressed flat against the glass. There are 2 lanterns on either side of the front door, already lit, even though the sky is not yet fully dark. Their light is warm and golden and steady. It does not flicker in the breeze. It simply glows, constant and welcoming, as though the inn has been expecting you. You park on the gravel. The engine goes quiet, and for a moment you just sit there, hands resting in your lap, listening to the silence. It is not truly silent. There is birdsong somewhere in the orchard that stretches along the left side of the inn, a single robin, singing its thin, sweet autumn song from somewhere deep among the apple trees. There is the tick of the cooling engine. There is the faint crunch of a small animal moving through leaves somewhere beyond the wall. And there is the wind, very low, moving through the orchard like a long, slow breath. You breathe with it. Out here, there is no signal on your phone. You noticed it drop away about a mile back, and the strange thing is that you did not mind at all. In fact, something in your chest loosened when it happened, some small tightness you had been carrying without quite knowing it, and now you feel lighter, less tethered to everything that needed your attention before you turned off the main road. You step out of the car. The gravel is uneven under your feet. The air is cooler than you expected, and you pull your coat a little tighter, but not because it is unpleasant. It is the good kind of cool, the kind that makes you want warm things. A fire, tea in a thick walled mug, a blanket across your lap. The robin has stopped singing. The valley is very still. You take your bag from the boot and walk toward the front door, and you notice that the path is lined with late season lavender, now dried and brown, but still holding its scent when you brush it gently as you pass. The smell is soft and faintly medicinal and deeply familiar. The way certain smells carry a feeling that has no name, something between safety and memory and the promise of sleep. The door is heavy oak, worn smooth at the handle from decades of hands. Before you knock or push it open, you pause for just a moment on the step. You look back at the lane, at the hedgerows going dark in the fading light, at the pale stripe of sky above the valley. A bat moves across it in a quick, erratic line and disappears. Then you turn back to the door, and you push it open, and warmth comes out to meet you. Inside, the entrance hall is low-ceilinged and lit by 2 table lamps, and the light spilling from a room to the left where a fire is burning. The walls are paneled in dark wood. There's a small desk in the corner with a brass bell on it and a handwritten sign that says, "Please ring back in a moment." There are coat hooks along one wall and a pair of muddy boots beneath them that suggest someone has been walking in the fields today. A clock on the wall ticks steadily. A tall vase of dried seed heads stands by the stairs, teasel and honesty and something feathery and pale that nods slightly as the warmth stirs the air. You set your bag down. You ring the bell very lightly. Its sound is small and round and fades gently, like a drop of water falling into still water, spreading out in rings and then gone. You wait, and while you wait, you realize you have already started to feel different. Slower, easier, as though the inn itself has some quality of stillness built into its walls, something pressed into the old stone over all the years of quiet evenings and low fires, and people arriving tired and leaving rested. Footsteps come from somewhere deeper in the building, soft, unhurried, the sound of someone who is never in a hurry and is glad you have come. She comes from the back of the inn, through a door behind the desk, and she is exactly the kind of person you hoped would be there. She is older, perhaps 60 or so, with gray hair pinned loosely at the back of her head, and a few strands escaping around her face. She is wearing a large knitted cardigan the color of oatmeal, and she moves with the calm ease of someone who has spent many years in a place she loves. Her name is Margaret. She tells you this as she comes around the desk, and she says it simply, without ceremony, as though you are already friends and have simply not met yet. She looks at you the way people rarely look at each other anymore, attentive, unhurried, genuinely glad. She takes your name from the book and nods, as though confirming something she already suspected. She says the room is ready. She says she has lit the fire up there because the evenings have been turning cold. She says supper will be at 7:30 if you would like it. Nothing fancy, just what was good at the market this week. You say yes to all of it. You feel yourself nodding before she has even finished speaking, as though your body is already ahead of you, already agreeing with everything that is being offered here. She leads you up the stairs. They are narrow and turn once at a small landing where a deep windowsill holds a collection of river stones, smooth, gray, sea green, almost white, arranged in no particular order, but with some care, you can tell. Someone placed them there because they wanted them there, and that specificity feels intimate and real. The upstairs corridor is short, with 3 doors off it. Yours is at the far end. Margaret opens it and steps back to let you go in first. And when you do, you stop just inside the door for a moment, the way you stop when something is simply right. The room is small and perfectly proportioned. The ceiling is low, with a single beam running across it, and the walls are a warm white. There's a bed along one wall, a high, old-fashioned bed with an iron frame painted a soft sage green, and on it a thick white duvet and 2 pillows that look deep and cool and softly yielding. There's a small fireplace with the fire that Margaret mentioned already burning in it, casting a moving amber light across the floor. There's a wooden chair in one corner with a folded blanket draped over its back, and beside the bed, a small table with a lamp on it and a glass of water, and a little vase holding 1 sprig of rosemary and 2 dried rose heads, the petals the color of old rust. The window looks out over the orchard. You go to it. Trees out there are old, low, and wide and gnarled, their branches reaching sideways as well as up, heavy with years. The last apples hang among the leaves, deep red against the darkening sky. The ground beneath them is scattered with windfalls, pale and brown where they have bruised, and between the trees, the grass is long and soft. There are no straight lines in any of it. Everything has grown according to its own nature, in its own time, and the result is something that feels completely unhurried and completely itself. Margaret has been telling you something. You come back to her voice. She is saying that the bathroom is just next door, and the towels are the large ones on the right. She is saying that there is tea and a small pot of honey on the tray on the chest of drawers, and the kettle is already filled. She is saying that if you want to walk in the orchard before supper, there is a spare pair of walking boots in the porch, all sizes. Help yourself. She says this last part with a small smile, as though she has said it many times and still means it every time. Then she leaves, pulling the door gently closed behind her, and you are alone. You stand in the middle of the room and let it settle around you. The fire makes a soft sound, not a crackle so much as a slow, rhythmic breathing. The wood is good dry apple wood. Margaret mentioned that earlier, and it burns with a sweet, almost spiced scent that drifts into the room and wraps itself around everything. The lamp beside the bed gives a warm, low light. Outside, the orchard has gone a deeper shade of gold as the sun drops behind the valley ridge, and the apples in the trees seem almost to glow from within, as though they have been storing light all summer long and are only now releasing it. You sit down on the edge of the bed. The mattress gives just the right amount. Not too soft, not too firm, the kind of mattress that holds you without pressing back. You rest your hands on your knees and breathe out slowly. You think briefly of the week behind you. It surfaces for just a moment, not with any sharpness, but vaguely, the way distant traffic sounds on a quiet morning, more texture than detail. And then it settles back down, because there is nothing here that asks anything of it. There is no agenda in this room, no schedule, no unread messages, no surface covered in things that need to be addressed. There is just the fire and the lamp and the orchard outside, and the sound of your own breathing gradually finding a slower, calmer rhythm. You make tea. You do it slowly, filling the kettle, though it is already filled, just for something to do with your hands. You warm the small ceramic pot first, the way you were taught as a child, and almost never do anymore. You wait for the kettle to come to the boil, and while you wait, you look out the window again, watching the last light leave the sky above the orchard. When the tea is ready, you take it to the chair by the fire, and you sit. You put your feet up on the small stool in front of it. You let the warmth of the mug move through your palms. You do not reach for your phone. You do not think about what time it is. You simply sit in the firelight and drink your tea and exist in this room quietly, without any particular need for anything to happen. And this, just this, is already more than enough. After a while, when the tea is gone and the fire has settled into a low, steady burn, you decide to go out to the orchard before the light disappears entirely. The boots Margaret mentioned are in the porch. A long wooden shelf along the wall, with 4 or 5 pairs in different sizes, all well worn and clean, laces tucked neatly inside. You find a pair that fits and step out through the side door of the inn into the early evening. The air has a new quality now. The warmth of the afternoon has lifted completely, and what remains is something cooler and finer, the air of a clear autumn evening on the edge of a valley, where cold comes in from the hills after dark. Your breath makes a small pale cloud in front of you, and you smile at it almost without meaning to. The orchard gate is low and wooden and latches simply with a thumb catch. It opens with the small complaint of an old hinge, and you pass through into the trees. They close around you quietly, not darkly. There is still enough light in the sky for the spaces between the branches to be pale and open. But the orchard has its own quality of enclosure, the way that old trees do. The branches reach and cross above your head without quite meeting, and the ground underfoot is soft with fallen leaves, and the occasional bruised apple that gives slightly beneath your foot with a scent of cider and sweetness and decay. The smell of something that has completed itself fully and returned to the earth. You walk slowly. There is no path in the orchard, just the grass between the trees, long and slightly damp where it has not been in the sun today. The trees are not in rows exactly. They were planted long ago, perhaps by someone who planted them one at a time as they felt like it, and they have grown into a spacing that feels natural and generous, with room between them for the light and the air, and for a person to walk without ducking. Some of them are enormous. The oldest ones have trunks wider than your embrace, deeply furrowed, dark, and mossy at the base, where the grass grows long and tangled around their roots. Their branches are thick and horizontal, growing outward more than upward, and they hold their last apples with a kind of patience, small, deep-colored fruit, some almost wine red, some the pale yellow-green of old glass. You stop beneath one of these old trees and look up. The branches spread above you in every direction, and through them you can see the sky, a deep blue now, the last breath of daylight still holding in the west, and the first star just appearing, a single steady point of light above the dark ridge of the valley. The branches frame it like an old window frame, cracked and familiar, and the star sits in the center of the view, as though it was placed there for exactly this moment. You stay there for a while. You do not need to do anything. You are simply in the orchard, in the cool, quiet air, beneath an old tree in the early evening, and it requires nothing from you. No opinion, no action, no interpretation. Just your breathing in and out, visible now in the cooling air, small and temporary and completely natural. Then you notice him. He is at the far end of the orchard, near the old stone wall that marks the boundary with the field beyond. An older man, wearing a canvas jacket and a flat cap, moving between the trees with a wicker basket over one arm. He is picking the last apples from the low branches, not hurrying, just reaching and placing, with the ease of a person who has done this same thing every autumn for many years. He does not seem to have noticed you. Or perhaps he has noticed you and simply does not feel the need to do anything about it. You walk toward him slowly, making enough sound on the leaves that he is not startled. He looks up when you are a few trees away. He has a broad, weathered face and eyes that are pale gray, the color of a sky between rainstorms, and he looks at you with a calm and unsurprised expression, as though visitors from the inn regularly appear in the orchard at dusk, which they probably do. His name is Thomas. He is Margaret's husband. He has been keeping this orchard for 34 years, he says, since they came here from a city he names, but does not linger on, as though the city belongs to a version of his life that is not the important version. He offers you an apple from the basket. It is small and imperfect, lopsided, with a patch of russeting on one side, a few small dark freckles. You take it and bite into it, and it is extraordinary. Not sweet, exactly, complex, the way good things are. Sharp first, then warm, then something like honey in the aftertaste, then a long, clean finish that leaves nothing but the sense of having tasted something genuine. Thomas watches you with quiet satisfaction. He tells you these are the foxwhelp, an old variety, not grown commercially anymore because they are small and uneven and do not pack or store well. He says they make the finest cider you will ever drink, and that there are 3 barrels of last year's pressing in the cellar of the inn that Margaret will bring out at supper if you would like some. He says it like an ordinary thing, not a gift, even though it is. You walk with him a little longer, not talking much, but not needing to. He picks the last reachable apples from 2 more trees, and you hold the basket for him when both his hands are needed, and he nods a quiet thanks. The orchard gets darker around you slowly, the way darkness comes in autumn without drama, without suddenness. The shapes of the trees soften. The sky above them deepens. When the basket is full, Thomas heads back toward the inn by a different path than you came in by, a narrow track along the stone wall, and before he goes, he pauses and looks back at you. He says, "No hurry. You can stay as long as you like." They lock the gate at 9. Then he is gone into the shadow of the trees, and you are alone again in the orchard, and the first owls are beginning somewhere in the valley below, low and unhurried, the sound carrying clearly in the still air. You stay a little longer, just a little. The cold is deepening now, and the frost is not far off. You can feel it coming, the way the air tightens when the temperature drops toward it. But for now, it is just cool and still and very quiet, and the apple in your hand is almost finished. And above you, in the last pale sky, the stars are coming in one by one. You find your way back to the inn through the gathering dark, following the warm square of light from the kitchen window. The side door has been left on the latch for you. Inside, the porch smells of earth and lanolin and the sweet, yeasty warmth of something baking. You exchange your boots for your own and hang your coat on the hook that seems, by arrangement with no one, to have become yours. The kitchen is through a narrow door at the end of the porch, and it is the heart of the inn. You do not go in, the door is only ajar, and this is Margaret's space, private and warm, full of the sounds of a meal being made. But the smell that comes through the gap is deep and layered and wonderful. Roasting root vegetables, butter in a pan, herbs you cannot individually name, but which together smell like every good autumn evening that has ever existed. The occasional soft clatter of a wooden spoon on a pot, the low sound of a radio playing something classical, the volume turned so far down it is more of a feeling than a sound. You go back to your room. The fire has been tended while you were out, stoked up a little. A new log added. The room is warmer now, golden, the shadows in the corners deep and soft. Someone has turned down the bed, folded the duvet back in a crisp triangle, and on the pillow there is a small piece of dark chocolate in a paper wrapper and a card that says, in handwriting that loops and leans slightly to the right, "Sleep well." You sit in the chair by the fire and unlace your shoes and set them aside. You feel the particular tiredness of having been in fresh air, not the grinding tiredness of overwork or poor sleep, but the clean, simple tiredness of a body that has moved through cool air and is ready now to be still. It is a different quality entirely. It sits in your legs, gently, and in your shoulders, and it makes the chair beneath you feel more like an embrace. You think about nothing in particular. This is rare, and you notice it with a kind of quiet gratitude. The usual traffic of thought, the list of things unfinished, the conversational replays, the low-level vigilance that follows you through ordinary days, all of that has quieted to almost nothing. In its place, there is something lighter, something more like the surface of still water than the usual busy current. Thoughts drift across it from time to time, but they do not catch. They move slowly and pass and leave the surface undisturbed. The fire shifts. A log settles lower, and the flames flatten for a moment, and then rise again, smaller but steadier. You get up and go to the window. The orchard is dark now, the trees reduced to black shapes against a sky that is alive with stars. It is a country sky, uncompromised by any city glow, and the stars are so numerous and so bright that they seem almost too close. The Milky Way stretches in a faint pale arc from one side of the valley to the other, and you look at it the way you perhaps have not looked at it since childhood, with the full weight of your attention, nothing else competing. Somewhere out there, among the dark shapes of the apple trees, you can see a small movement of light, a torch moving slowly between the trees. Thomas, perhaps, doing a last check, or Margaret, stepping out for the night air before supper. Or no one you know, just someone from the valley, cutting through by old habit, the way people do in places where the land is shared and familiar, and no one minds. The light moves between two trees and then disappears behind the wall. You let the curtain fall and turn back to the room. On the chest of drawers, there is a small stack of books Margaret has left there, dog-eared paperbacks, and one hardback with a cracked spine, the kind of books that live in country inns and have been read by dozens of different people in this same chair, by this same fire. You pick up the hardback. It is a collection of nature writing, essays about rivers and birds, and ancient woodland, short chapters. No urgency. The kind of book designed exactly for a place like this. You read 3 pages standing up, and then carry it to the chair and go on reading. But the words begin to slow. Not because the book is dull, it is not, but because the room is warm and the fire is speaking softly and the chair is exactly right, and your eyes are doing what they do when the body finally decides that it has done enough for today and would like, very kindly and very firmly, to stop. You put the book down on the arm of the chair, spine up, where you left off. You sit for a moment with your eyes closed, and the fire sends its warmth across your face in slow, soft pulses, and the wood in it makes a sound almost like a breath, like something alive and resting. And you are not asleep yet, but you are very close to the border of it, that warm woolen edge where the world softens at its corners, and your thoughts begin to move the way clouds move, without direction and without weight. A knock at the door. Soft, 3 times. Margaret's voice just outside. Supper in 15 minutes, if you'd like it. You say yes. You hear her steps retreat down the corridor. You open your eyes. The room is exactly as it was, firelit, warm, still. And you feel the small, pleasant tug of having been pulled back from the edge of sleep, not unhappily. There is something luxurious about being called to a warm meal in a place like this, something that feels old-fashioned in the best possible sense, the way certain things that have fallen out of common life feel like gifts when you stumble back upon them. You stand, stretch, cross to the small mirror above the chest of drawers, and look at your face. You look quieter, you think. Slower in some way that does not mean tired, but means arrived. As though the journey here, the long, slow drive, the orchard, the cool air, the fire, has done something to the surface of you that sitting at a desk, in a lit office, could not undo, but that apparently a single afternoon in the right place could. You wash your hands in the small basin in the corner. The water is very cold, briefly, then warm. You dry them on the white towel and fold it back over the rail. You take one last look at the orchard through the window, dark, full of stars, perfectly still. And then you open the door and go downstairs. The dining room is a single long table set with candles and mismatched china. No two plates the same pattern, but all of them beautiful in the way that old things collected over years are beautiful, each one with its own small history. There are deep red dahlias in a jug in the center of the table, the last of the season, their petals dense and heavy, and going slightly soft at the edges. There is one other guest at the inn tonight. Her name is Evelyn, and she is already seated when you come down, reading a small notebook with a pen in her hand, though she closes it without any self-consciousness when you appear, and smiles and gestures at the chair across from her, as though this is her home, which of course it is not, but which is the kind of ease that some people simply have. She is perhaps in her late 50s, fine-boned, with the alert, unhurried quality of someone who has long since learned to be comfortable in her own company. She is a watercolor painter, she tells you, though not in the way people sometimes announce their occupation, with assertion or hope for a particular response. She says it simply as a fact, the way you might say that you prefer the window seat or take your tea without milk. She has been coming to the inn for 12 years. Every autumn, she says, for a week. She paints the orchard and the valley, and sometimes the old mill further up the river. She brings enough work and enough quiet back from the week to last her most of the winter. She says this with no drama, just as a person who understands how she works and has made practical arrangements accordingly. You find yourself telling her something true, something you have not said aloud for a while, perhaps because you have not had the right kind of quiet around you to think it clearly. You say that you have been looking forward to this for a long time, but that you almost did not come, that there was always a reason to put it off. Evelyn nods, as though this is entirely familiar. She says, "That is exactly why you need to go." Margaret brings the food in 2 trips, soup first, a deep amber color, made from roasted parsnip and apple, and something slightly spiced that you cannot identify, but which warms you from the first spoonful all the way down into your chest. Then a plate of slow roasted pork with root vegetables, and a small jug of rich dark gravy that she sets down without comment. There is bread in a cloth, still faintly warm. There's a glass of cloudy cider that Thomas has poured from one of the barrels Margaret mentioned, pale gold, dry, with a complexity that begins at the back of the tongue and ends somewhere long after you have swallowed. You eat slowly. This is unusual for you, you realize. On ordinary days, you eat quickly, at a desk, or standing at a counter, with one eye on something else. Here, there is nothing to have one eye on. There is only the table and the candles and Evelyn across from you, and the sound of the fire in the next room, and the click and murmur of something in the kitchen. You eat a spoonful of soup and taste it completely. You take a piece of bread and notice the texture of it, the slight resistance, and then the soft give, the warmth still in the crust. You talk, you and Evelyn, but not continuously. There are pauses, and the pauses are not awkward. She tells you about the mill up the river, how it stopped working in the 1940s and has been slowly returning to the landscape since, the walls going mossy, the mill pond filling with reeds, the wheel still and rusted, but still standing. She says it is one of the most quietly beautiful things she has ever seen. She says she has painted it 7 times over the years, and it is different every time: the light, the season, the mood of the water. She says, places like that, places that have been allowed to go slowly back to themselves, they have something in them, a kind of patience. You can feel it. You ask her what it feels like, trying to paint something like that. She considers this for a moment, turning her glass slightly in her hands. She says it feels like listening. She says that painting, for her, is mostly about sitting very still and listening very carefully to what is already there, and then trying not to get in the way of it. Margaret brings apple crumble and cream without asking, sets it down between you both, and disappears back into the kitchen. The crumble is golden and thick crusted, and the apples beneath it are soft and barely sweetened. Just the fruit doing what the fruit does when it is good and ripe and given time and heat. By the time you have finished, the candles are shorter, and the room has taken on that particular quality of evening when the darkness outside has been fully established, and the inside light has become its own world, complete and unhurried and warm. Thomas comes in briefly to put a log on the fire in the sitting room and tells you the forecast for tomorrow is clear and cold, perfect walking weather, and that the path up the valley from the back gate is good underfoot if you want to reach the ridge by noon. You thank him. You think you probably will. Evelyn finishes her cider and closes the small notebook she has taken out again between courses. She says good night simply and warmly and goes upstairs, and you sit alone at the table for a few minutes more, your hands around your glass, not thinking very much, just existing in the amber light. Then Margaret appears to clear the table, and she smiles at you in the way she has that steady, genuine smile, and she says, "I hope the room is comfortable." You say it is, very more than comfortable, and you mean it in a way that feels slightly larger than just the bed and the fire. She nods, satisfied, as though she knew. You say good night. You go upstairs. Your room is exactly as you left it, except that the fire has been tended again, and the lamp by the bed turned on, and the curtains drawn, thick curtains the color of deep moss, heavy enough to hold out the cold from the old window glass. The room has taken on the full warmth of the evening now. The apple wood in the fireplace has burned down to a deep red glow, and the occasional small flame that rises from it does so quietly, flickering blue at the base and orange at the tip, completely self-contained and utterly indifferent to anything outside itself. You brush your teeth. You wash your face. The cool water on your skin is a small and precise pleasure, and you are aware of it in a way that you are often not aware of small things. Your senses have slowed down to something more deliberate, something that wants to notice rather than absorb and move on. You sit on the edge of the bed and unwrap the piece of dark chocolate from the pillow. It is good chocolate, very dark, and it melts slowly on your tongue and leaves a long, clean, slightly bitter finish that is exactly right after the sweetness of the crumble. You sit for a moment, just tasting it. Then you lie down. The duvet settles over you with the weight and the warmth of something that has been waiting patiently. Not heavy, just present, like a hand placed gently on your shoulder. You lie on your back first, arms at your sides, and look up at the ceiling. The firelight moves on the plaster above you. It is entirely soundless movement, shadows growing and shrinking and crossing and dissolving, a slow and irregular pattern that has no repeat, no rhythm you can predict. You watch it the way you might watch water moving over shallow stones. There's nothing to understand and nothing to follow. It simply happens, and you simply watch. Your breathing has found a pace that is your own. Slow in, slow out, a long natural pause at the end of each breath before the next one comes. You are not directing it. Your body has done this by itself, the way bodies do when they are finally given enough stillness to remember what they know. The fire settles, a long, quiet sound, like something leaning back in a chair. Outside, the valley is completely dark and completely silent. The owl you heard earlier has moved further away, or perhaps stopped. The wind has dropped entirely. There is no traffic. There is no hum of streetlights, or the distant noise of a motorway, or the low background vibration of a city that you often do not consciously hear, but always carry, like a note held just below the range where you can name it. Here there is none of that. Here there is only the room and the fire and the dark and your own breathing. You let your eyes close. Beneath your eyelids, the glow of the fire is orange-red, like the inside of a cupped hand held up to the sun. It is warm and shifting, and it asks nothing. You let your attention rest on it lightly, not staring at it, not concentrating, just resting your awareness there the way you might rest your eyes on a distant meadow, receiving rather than looking. Your body is heavy. It is a good kind of heavy, the heaviness of something released, of all the small tensions of the day leaving the muscles they were living in. Your shoulders let go first, then your jaw, which you hadn't realized was slightly clenched. Then your hands, lying open now, palms up at your sides. Then something deeper in the center of your chest, some small held thing that loosens and drifts and disperses like wood smoke into the evening air. You think, briefly, of the orchard, the old trees in the dark, the apples on the branches, still holding on, the stone wall along the field boundary, mossy and old and solid, the soft, long grass between the trees, wet with coming frost, Thomas with his basket, moving between the shadows without any hurry, collecting the last of the season's fruit with the ease of someone who has learned that everything has its own timing, and there is no good in trying to rush the ripening. This thought moves through you and settles, and is gone. Another thought comes, something from your life, a face, a question you have been carrying, and you let it be there for a moment without engaging it. It has no urgency here. Here, it is just a thought, just a passing thing, with no more power over you than the shadow of a branch moving across a wall. It stays for a moment, and then it too moves on. The firelight dims slightly. The log is nearing its end. You are very close to sleep now. You can feel its edge, that warm, dissolving boundary, where the room begins to lose its sharp outlines, and your thoughts begin to arrive as images rather than words. The orchard, now somehow lit from within, the apples glowing gently, the long dining table with its candles, Evelyn's hands on her notebook, Margaret's steady smile, the lane coming in from the main road, the hedgerows arching overhead, the late light falling in long, warm stripes across the glass. A feeling comes with all of this, not any one emotion with a name, but something composed of many small, quiet things. Safety, yes. Warmth. The particular pleasure of having arrived somewhere good after a long time of trying to get there. A kind of permission, finally, to put everything down. You are still. You are warm. You are here. The fire makes one last small sound, settling into its own embers. And the sleep, when it comes the way evening came in over the orchard, without announcement, without drama, slowly deepening, until suddenly it is simply there, and you are simply in it, and the room around you is quiet and warm and entirely still. In the night, you half wake once. The fire has gone to ash, gray, and faintly glowing at its base. The room is cooler now, but the duvet has held your warmth around you, and you are not cold, just aware, briefly, of the room's new darkness, the absence of the firelight, and the depth of the quiet outside. Through the curtains, there is a thin line of silver light at the bottom edge. Moonlight coming in from the orchard side, still and bright. The room has a softness in this darkness. All the same shapes, the chair, the chest of drawers, the iron frame of the bed, but reduced to their silhouettes, still and quiet as figures in a deep sleep of their own. You lie there for a moment, aware that you have been deeply asleep, aware that you are warm, aware that there is nothing at all that requires your attention. Then you sink back down. The sleep comes back like the tide returning, not rushing in, but rising steadily, smoothly, from the feet upward. And everything goes soft again. And the room and the darkness and the moonlight at the curtain's edge all go gentle and distant and then gone. You dream, if you dream at all, of the orchard, of walking between the trees in a light that is neither morning nor evening, but something in between. A light you have seen maybe once or twice in your life in early autumn, when the air is clear after rain, and the sun is low, and everything has an edge of gold on it that does not seem like sunlight exactly, but like something the world is generating from within itself. The trees are full of apples, not the last few you saw hanging on the branches this evening, but dozens, hundreds, the trees at the height of their bearing, heavy and weighted and completely themselves. You walk beneath them, and the apples hang above you close enough to touch, and the smell of them fills the whole dream, that sharp, sweet smell of fruit on the turn, fermenting gently in the warm air, becoming something other than what it was, becoming richer, more complex, more deeply itself. You are not going anywhere in the dream. You are not looking for anything or trying to do anything. You are simply in the orchard, in the golden light, among the old trees. And you feel something in the dream that carries a word, but barely needs one. Something that in waking life you would call happiness, or peace, or enough, or simply right. Something simple and physical, like warmth, but deeper. A warmth that is not about temperature, but about being exactly where you are meant to be in exactly this moment, with no other moment pressing in on either side. The dream holds. The orchard holds. The sleep holds, even and deep and warm, through the rest of the night. Morning comes slowly, as it does in valleys. The light has to climb the eastern ridge first, and while it does, the valley floor is still in a soft blue shadow, and the mist that has formed overnight over the river and the low meadows lies in slow white layers between the trees. You surface into waking gently, not startled, not pulled up by alarm, but rising at your own pace, the way you rise from deep water when you have decided, in your own time, to come back up. First, the sense of the pillow beneath your cheek, then the warmth of the duvet, then the sound from outside, birdsong, scattered and low, the tentative morning song of birds not yet sure of the day. You lie still for a long time. There's no need to be anywhere. There is no schedule pulling at the edge of your awareness. The day ahead is entirely open, a walk, perhaps, up the valley path Thomas described. Breakfast at whatever hour you appear. Time in the orchard, or beside the fire with the book you started. Nothing decided, nothing required, everything simply available. You let this sink in the way water sinks into dry ground. Slowly, by degrees, meeting a little resistance at first, the habit of urgency, the small voice that always wants to know what comes next, and then spreading out, finding the spaces between things, settling. Outside, the mist is moving. Through the gap in the curtains you can see it drifting slowly between the orchard trees, very white in the pale early light, low to the ground, the tree trunks rising above it into a clear sky that is the palest possible blue. The mist moves the way breath moves slowly, continuously, without any clear beginning or end. A blackbird begins to sing. Fully, this time, not the tentative testing you heard a moment ago, but the real song, the one that goes on and on, each phrase different, each one moving into the next without pause, endlessly varied and endlessly itself. The blackbird's song fills the orchard and rises into the pale sky and spreads out over the valley. And if you listen to it carefully enough, without trying to hold onto any individual phrase, just letting it arrive and pass and arrive again, it does something to time. It makes it liquid. It takes the usual counted, measured, forward-pressing sense of time and softens it into something that flows like the mist between the trees, present, continuous, unhurried. You close your eyes and listen. The blackbird sings. The mist drifts between the old apple trees. The sky above the valley ridge grows slowly lighter. And you are here, exactly here, warm beneath the duvet, in this quiet room in this old inn. And the morning is arriving all around you at its own pace. And you are in no hurry at all to meet it. When you do finally come downstairs, the morning has opened fully. The mist has lifted from the orchard and the low meadows, and the sun is coming in through the east-facing windows of the inn's small sitting room in long, level shafts that fall across the wooden floor and the rug and the arm of the old sofa in stripes of clean, cold light. Breakfast is laid on the sideboard, bread, real butter, a jar of dark preserve that turns out to be damson, a pot of tea already made and wrapped in a knitted cozy the color of autumn leaves. There are eggs in a small pan on the stove in the kitchen. Margaret calls from somewhere. Help yourself, or wait 2 minutes, and she will bring them, whichever you prefer. You pour a cup of tea first. You stand at the east-facing window with it, both hands around the mug, and look out at the morning. The orchard is bright in the early sunlight, the long grass between the trees still silver with frost in the shade. But where the sun reaches it, each blade of grass catches the light and holds it for a moment, blazing, before the frost melts and the brightness fades. The apples on the trees are wet and gleaming. Two blackbirds move across the ground beneath the nearest tree, heads tilted, probing the fallen leaves for something. Evelyn is already outside. You can see her through the window, set up at the edge of the orchard with a small easel and a square of watercolor paper, her back to the inn, facing the line of old trees. She is still. She has been still for some time, you can tell. She is in the listening that she described last night, that patient, receptive quiet, waiting for what is there to make itself known. Margaret brings the eggs. She sets them down on the small table by the window and stands for a moment, following your gaze to Evelyn in the orchard. She says she's been out there since first light. Every year, there is a warmth in her voice when she says it, the warmth of someone who has watched people come to place and let it do what it does, year after year, and who understands that this is no small thing. You eat breakfast slowly. The eggs are good, from hens kept in the yard behind the kitchen. Margaret mentions this without pride, as pure information, the way people mention things that are simply true. The damson preserve is dark and tart and intense, and with the butter and the dense bread, it is one of those meals that is so straightforwardly right that it needs nothing said about it. Afterward, you put on your coat and boots and go out to the garden at the back of the inn before your walk. It is a small garden, enclosed by the stone wall on 3 sides, with a wooden bench in the corner that catches the morning sun. The garden is mostly given over to herbs, great sprawling mounds of rosemary and thyme and sage, all of them gray and slightly battered now after a long season, but still fragrant when you brush them with your hand. At the far end, a fig tree grows against the south-facing wall, its leaves gone now, just the bare gray branches and the few last figs, small and hard, left on the twigs like small dark punctuation marks. You sit on the bench in the sun. The wall behind you holds the warmth. Stone always does, once it has found some. And this wall has been in the sun since the ridge cleared, which was some time ago. You feel it through your coat, steady and reliable. The way walls in old gardens have a warmth that feels almost intentional, as though the stone has been storing it up specifically for this. You close your eyes and turn your face to the sun. It is not warm enough to remove your coat, but on your face, the sunlight is distinct and real and carrying just enough heat to be felt. You breathe in the garden smell, stone and frost and herbs, and the distant apple sweetness from the orchard, and breathe out slowly and sit there, face upturned, eyes closed, for however long feels right. The sounds of the morning organize themselves around you. The blackbirds in the orchard. Somewhere further off, a wood pigeon, that low, repetitive, deeply familiar sound that seems to come from the center of the English countryside itself, rather than from any individual bird. A door somewhere in the inn opened and gently closed. The distant sound of water, you hadn't noticed it before, but now you can hear it clearly. The river somewhere beyond the back wall, running over stones, carrying the valley's cold, clear water down toward whatever is below. You have not thought about your ordinary life in some time now. This is not a decision you made. It has simply happened, the way certain things happen when you give them space. The noise has found its own level, settled, receded, and what remains is this: you in a garden, in the sun, in the quiet, with the morning all around you and nothing asking anything of you at all. You think of Evelyn in her listening, facing the orchard. You think of Thomas in the apple press, working with the fruit that the season has given without requiring anything from the season except what it naturally offers. You think of Margaret in her kitchen, making things carefully and well. In the same place, she has made them for 34 years, finding in that continuity something that looks, from the outside, a great deal like contentment. And that probably, from the inside, is exactly that. You wonder what it would mean to bring some of this home with you. Not this place, you cannot bring this place, but something in the quality of attention that seems available here. Something in the willingness to be fully where you are, without resistance, without the habit of looking ahead to the next thing before this thing has been completely received. The sun moves. The bench stays warm. You stay a little longer. Then you stand, stretch, pull your coat close, and go in through the back door to the inn to collect your things for the walk. The path up the valley begins at a wooden gate in the far corner of the inn's back garden, beyond the herb beds. Thomas has oiled the hinge recently. It swings open without a sound, which seems almost improbably considerate, as though someone prepared this morning specifically for you. The path follows the river. It is narrow and well used, pressed into the ground by years of walking, skirting the bank where the willows grow and threading between the alders along the waterline. The river to your right is brown from recent rain in the hills, running quickly over its stones, carrying small leaves and twigs downstream in little rushes. The sound it makes changes constantly, deeper and heavier in the wide sections where it slows, then sharper and more percussive where it narrows over a ridge of stone, and the water lifts and falls in small glittering steps. You walk slowly. Your breath makes clouds in the cold air. Frost still lies in the deep shade under the trees, white on the fallen leaves, and when you step through it, the leaves crunch softly under your boots with the particular dry sound of frost stiff things yielding. A heron stands in the shallows on the far bank. It is utterly still. You almost miss it. Its gray-blue color is almost exactly the color of the water and shadow behind it, and it has arranged itself in that way herons have of becoming part of the river landscape, as though stillness long enough becomes invisibility. Only when it turns its head slightly, very slowly, tracking something beneath the surface, does the movement give it away. You stop. It does not look at you. It is looking at the river, at some particular spot of water, with a concentration so absolute and so unhurried that it seems not like predatory focus so much as a form of meditation. The neck curves and holds. The long beak is angled toward the surface. Nothing moves except the water. You stand and watch it for a very long time. There is something deeply restful about watching an animal that is completely itself. There is no performance in the heron, no self-awareness, no agenda beyond the single clear purpose of this moment, which is to stand in the river and wait and be ready. It is not impatient. It is not frustrated by the waiting. It is the waiting fully and completely, as though this is not a means to an end, but the whole of the thing. Eventually, the heron shifts. It lifts its huge wings. They are enormous, spreading wide in a slow, effortful upstroke. And it rises above the river and crosses to the far side of the valley with a few deep wing beats, trailing its legs behind it like a long, slow thought. And then it is gone behind the line of willows, and the river is empty again, and the morning is very still. You walk on. The path climbs gently through a stand of oak trees, the leaves here not yet fallen, but changed to copper and deep amber, glowing against the pale sky. The oaks are old, not as old as the apple trees perhaps, but old enough that their trunks have thickened and ridged, and given themselves over fully to the slow work of being a tree, to the single long project of standing in one place and growing year by year, and leafing and fruiting and dropping and leafing again. At the top of the oak, the path opens out onto a broad shelf of hillside where the trees thin, and you can see the whole valley below you. The river winding through it, pale in the morning light, the fields on either side divided by their ancient hedgerows, the village just visible half a mile downstream, a church tower, and a cluster of rooftops, smoke rising from 2 or 3 chimneys in thin vertical lines, perfectly straight in the still air, rising and rising until they dissolve at some point far above into the vast pale sky. And the inn, small from up here, set among its trees, its slate roof catching the light, the orchard beside it, and you can see Evelyn still at her easel, a tiny figure, motionless, facing the same trees she has faced for the last hour. You stand on the hillside and look at all of it. The valley is old. Everything in it is old. The fields were shaped by people who have been gone for centuries, who walked these same paths and stood on the same ridge in this same autumn light and looked at the same river and heard the same water over the same stones. The apple trees in the orchard were planted by someone whose name no one knows now, and they have been bearing fruit ever since, quietly, season after season, requiring nothing from the memory of that person. The valley does not need anyone to remember it in order to continue being itself. It simply is. It has been, and it will be, and right now you are in the middle of that long being, and it holds you in it as naturally and simply as the air holds the smoke from the chimneys. You breathe deeply. The cold air enters you cleanly, down to the bottom of your lungs, and you breathe it out slowly and feel the particular aliveness of a body that has been walking in cool air on a clear morning after a long, deep sleep. You are well. You are genuinely, simply well, not in the way of having recovered from something, not as the opposite of ill, but in the older sense of the word, the sense that means whole and present and in good order. The way a tree is well when its roots are deep and its branches have room. The way the river is well when it is running clear and cold and meeting no obstruction. You stay on the ridge for a long time. Then you turn back, and the path that brought you up carries you down just as easily, and the valley rises to receive you, and the inn appears through the oak trees, warm-colored, low-roofed, solid, and the smell of wood smoke reaches you from some distance away, before you have even crossed the back garden, and it is the most welcoming smell in the world. You come back into the inn through the back door, cold and clear-headed and content in that specific way that comes from having walked far enough and long enough to leave the days beginning somewhere on the path behind you, somewhere you do not need to retrieve. The sitting room is warm. Someone has laid the fire again. It is burning brightly now, midday bright, with a new arrangement of logs that will last for hours. The autumn sunlight comes through the south-facing windows in wide, clean sheets, falling across the sofa and the rug and the surface of the low table, where a pot of tea and 2 cups have been left, and a plate of thin shortbread biscuits, and a small jar of damson jam with a cloth cover fastened with a rubber band. Evelyn is on the sofa with her painting. She holds it at arm's length and looks at it with a critical, interested expression, tilting it slightly toward the light. She sees you come in and turns it to show you without ceremony. It is the orchard, or it is the feeling of the orchard, the shapes of the trees suggested in broad washes of gray-brown and ochre, the frost on the ground rendered in the white of the paper itself, unpainted, negative space, used so precisely that it reads exactly right. The light in it is the morning light you were both standing in only a few hours ago, and it is there on the paper, unmistakably, not copied but remembered or felt, which in the end is the same thing. You tell her it is beautiful. You mean it without any effort to mean it. She says she is not sure about the near tree on the left. She will look at it again tomorrow. You both have tea. The shortbread is buttery and dissolves without effort. The fire is warm and sounds exactly as it should. Outside, the afternoon is settling into itself, the light shifting slightly as the sun crosses its midday point and begins its long, slow decline toward the ridge, the shadows in the orchard lengthening by small degrees. In the afternoon, you read. You sit in the deep armchair in the corner of the sitting room with the nature book you brought down from your room, and you read 3 essays about rivers. One about the why, one about the loon, one about a river the author does not name, but describes so carefully that it feels like somewhere you have been, or somewhere you will go, or somewhere that exists in the space between memory and imagination, where the rivers we have loved best tend to live. The afternoon passes the way afternoons pass in the best places and the best company, not slowly, not quickly, but invisibly, which is to say that time ceases to be the point. The fire goes to embers, and someone adds a log. The light in the windows changes from gold to amber to the particular deep rose of a clear autumn sunset, and then quite suddenly it is evening again, and the lamps are on, and the smell of supper is coming from the kitchen. At table, Thomas joins you tonight. He sits at the end of the long table with a glass of cider and talks, unhurriedly, about the orchard in the years when the harvest was poor, and the years when it was extraordinary, and one year, he says, when the trees produced so many apples that they ran out of barrels, and had to press through the night 3 nights running, tells this not as a triumph, but simply as one of the things that happened, one of the things the orchard did, one chapter in a long relationship between 2 old parties, the farmer and the trees, who have long since arrived at an understanding. He asks you nothing about your life at home. This does not feel like incuriosity, but like courtesy, like a recognition that you came here to be somewhere else for a little while, and that asking would be pulling you back across a border you crossed for a reason. You are grateful for this in a way you could not easily explain. After supper, after the cider and the apple crumble, and the slow, unhurried conversation, you go upstairs. The room is as it has been, the fire lit, the bed turned down, the small piece of chocolate on the pillow, the card saying sleep well in its looping hand. The curtains are drawn, but you open them for a moment and look out. The orchard is dark and deep and completely still. The frost has come in properly tonight. You can see it beginning on the windowsill outside, a thin crystalline white forming along the wood in patterns that are precise and intricate and entirely unwitnessed, except by you, in this moment, looking out at the cold and quiet night. The stars above the valley are extraordinary. The Milky Way is fully visible, brighter than last night, a soft river of light spanning the whole dark sky. You count, without meaning to count, 7 stars in the plow, 4 in the kite of Boötes, and then you stop counting and simply look. The universe is very large and very old, and the valley is very small and very old in a different way, and the orchard is older than anything else nearby, and you have been here 2 days, and already it feels like somewhere you know, which means somewhere that knows you back. And this is the oldest kind of belonging there is. You let the curtain fall. You undress slowly in the firelight. You fold your clothes over the chair. You drink the glass of water from the bedside table, cool and clean, and you place it gently back on the wooden surface and hear the small sound it makes there, a soft, settled sound. You lie down. The bed receives you completely. The duvet settles over you like a known thing, like the feeling of a room you grew up in, like the exact temperature and weight of safety. Your head finds the pillow with that precise rightness that only comes when you are deeply ready for sleep. When the body and the mind have both finished, genuinely finished, and have nothing left to ask. You close your eyes. The firelight comes through your eyelids in orange and rose. From somewhere in the orchard, very far away or perhaps very near, it is impossible to tell in the still night air, an owl calls once, soft and deep and ancient, and then is silent. The warmth in the room is complete. Your breathing slows, in and out, in, out. The fire settles one last time, finding a deeper comfort in its own ash, and the sound it makes is barely a sound at all, just a small, final, tender exhalation. The old apple trees stand in the frost outside, their roots deep in the valley earth, their branches holding the cold, dark air. their fruit long since gathered in and pressed and becoming something richer and more complex and more itself. There is no hurry. There is no hurry for anything. The valley holds the night. The night holds the valley. The inn holds the warmth, and the warmth holds you, and you hold nothing now but your own stillness. And that, finally, is enough. That is more than enough. That is, if you are patient enough to let it be, everything. Sleep now. You are warm. You are safe. You are here.